Hello and welcome to YHTV's nominated show, Magical Medical Tour. Thank you for joining us today. I'm Christina Suzama, and with me is our wonderful medical guide and co-host, Dr. Glenn Woolman. Hello, Dr. Woolman.
Hello, Christina.
We're jumping into your doctor's bag today, aren't we?
This is one of those days.
Oh, I'm excited. I don't even know what it's about.
Well, I'll give you a hint. It's about life.
Oh, dear. I think.
Yeah. And it's about your life.
Oh, my. Look out, everyone. The tsunami is going to roll.
Yeah, there you go. Greetings, everyone. Speaking about everyone. Welcome to Magical Medical Tour. I'm Dr. Glenn Woolman. I will be your medical guide along with Christina today as we travel another galaxy quadrant looking for optimal health. So, as Christina already alluded, it's going to be inside the doctor's bag today, where I will talk about some topics that are near and dear to me. Now, normally I usually present some scientific information about different topics, but today I'm going to do something different. This is going to be no science. It's going to be just some of my observations and thoughts about life, the beginning, the middle, and the end. And we'll see where it goes. It will be based on some observations, as I said, and I will claim actually no technical knowledge to the highly specific degrees of child behaviorists and psychiatrists and psychotherapists, but we'll see where this goes.
Sounds great. Now, just to let our audience know, at any time during during the show, you are very welcome to make a comment or ask a question of Dr. Woolman. Just type it into the box at the bottom of your screen, and we will make sure that it gets to him. He's very good about answering those questions.
Yes, even if we don't get to it during our show, we will promise you we'll get to it. So, Christina, also today, it's going to be very important for me because you usually represent every person. We always talk about that, right? Where you're the every person
the peanut gallery.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're the peanut gallery. So I'm going to bounce a lot of my proposed ideas off of you because they're going to be designed toward parents and kids. And not being a parent, I can claim I've been a kid, and parts of me still kid-like. So I have some authority there. But as I said, in other areas, I don't necessarily have the authority. So I wanted to pick your brain as I go through this and see how comfortable you would feel with some of the things I'm going to potentially suggest today.
Sounds good. I'm all ready.
Excellent.
I'm all ears.
There you go. So obviously people usually start when you talk about beginning, middle, and end at the beginning. But I'm going to start in the middle, as you would expect from me. No?
Well, I thought you'd start at the end, actually, and work backwards. Or forward, really, is like the next life.
Yeah, forward from the end. Well, that's probably where I am anyway. The middle probably could be the end.
At every stage.
At every stage, exactly. So I started thinking about one of the stories about the early young prince Siddhartha, who got with his charioteer. I'm sure you probably know this story, where he went out among the people and he saw people suffering. And the people he saw suffering, he saw an example of a sick person suffering. And then he saw a person that was elderly suffering. And then he saw a person, a corpse, and the suffering around that. And from that, a lot of his philosophies, his concerns about suffering and how to figure out a path toward the relief of suffering. So we know that story. So I was thinking about that, and I was thinking about the suffering that I've seen in my own personal experiences, of course, like we all have, but also being in medical school and going through medical school, going through internships and residencies, and being in emergency medicine for many years in major trauma centers and in rural communities, a number of areas. So I've seen a lot of people in suffering moments. And so I have some experience there. And in my observations, in terms of suffering, what happens in people's lives, in the middle of their lives, what I'm seeing now, this is why I'm talking about the middle, I'm seeing more people that are really getting injured and hurting themselves. So it's not just about illness and elderly. There's a lot more people in the middle age that are suffering now. And I think it's because of things that they're doing early on when all of us are usually immortal. And we feel like we can heal from everything. So the sequence usually goes where somebody gets injured, and in many cases they heal fine, but in other cases they don't necessarily heal well. Then they get a recurrent injury. They start getting limitations of motion and mobility, eventually go on to medications, have side effects from medications, go on different medications, more side effects, adding integrative and alternative therapies, surgery, post-ops, recovery, physical therapy, more injuries, more surgeries, and so on and so on. And that covers a lot of time and suffering. You know, that's over years and years that I'm watching people suffer. And so I wanted to figure and think about, is there anything I could do about that? Or at least think about in terms of, as you know, as a medical guide, I like to practice preparatory medicine along with preventive medicine. So we try to prevent illness and injury, but we also try to prepare for them. So along with the suffering, the other thing that I've observed, and these are the two reasons for the show today, long story here, we only seem to learn as a species about things when we have a substantial and sometimes life-altering event happen to us. That's when we become enlightened, so to speak, about our health. And this is particularly what I'm talking about right now, health and having healthy tissue and healthy cells. We only learn these things. We get told stories, be careful about this, be careful about that, don't do this, don't do that, and we don't listen to that. Change your diet, exercise more, sleep more, de-stress, all of these things that we talk about. And we've talked about this on many, many shows. But taking the idea that we only learn from deeper experiences, I've thought of some ideas for how we should maybe prepare kids in another way. And this is where I want to start talking to you. So one of the areas I'm going to talk about today, and of course we could talk about failure of the entire body. We know the body eventually fails. We talk about congestive heart failure and kidney failure. You've heard those expressions, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, so we know that. But what we're seeing more and more are bones, joints, ligaments, and tendons that are starting to fail much more rapidly than they used to many years ago. And we don't stress enough about bones and joints and ligaments and tendons. Young kids are wanting to build muscles, you know, and go to the gym and work out and exercise to build muscles. But we don't spend as much time teaching a child to protect bones, joints, ligaments, and tendons. And I think this is an area that we need to look at. If you think about surgeries now, in orthopedic surgeries, you almost never hear of someone having a bicep replaced, right? Or a tricep replaced.
Mm-hmm.
But you do hear about a total knee, a total hip, a total shoulder. These are things that are being replaced. And those are joints. So that's where damage is occurring, and that's where the suffering is occurring. And that suffering, as I expressed early, goes on for a really long period of time before you have the surgery. Nobody injures their shoulder and then goes immediately for a total shoulder. They go for, they try and heal it just with ice and heat and Tylenol, and then they try to heal it, maybe with a sling, immobilizing it, then an injection of some kind, a steroid injection, multiple. But in between all of these are weeks and weeks and months and years of suffering. So I think that we need to start teaching children about chronic pain and about bones, joints, ligaments, and tendons. So, one of the things that I'm going to suggest, and this is for parents to consider doing with their child at a certain point in time, and I don't know when that is. We could have a child psychologist come on and tell us a good point. Even if they believe in this, they may not. But I think, as an example, a child should have an episode or a challenge to put, say, a little pebble in their shoe where it's going to hurt a little bit and they have to limp a little bit. And you take them around for 10 minutes, an hour, an entire day where they have to understand that. And then with that, make a connection to point out in your observations when you're with the child out in life at a mall or shopping or at a farmer's market or at a ball game or something like that, people that have problems, that are walking with canes and walking with crutches and limping, and explaining to them, this is what chronic pain is, and this is how you might get it by not caring for your joints and ligaments and tendons in the appropriate way. So my first question to you is, Christina, would you feel comfortable taking your child and having him do that for a certain amount of time?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, for me, it's always been about creating that level of awareness and consciousness from a very young age. I mean, even since my child was born, and starting the sign language and the visual languages and the touch right from the moment he's born was really important. The music, the languages, and not having any expectation, but
Correct.
only knowledge, not coming from a scientific background or a medical background, the knowledge that our brain is so powerful. And all my life growing up, you hear, oh, you only use a small percentage of your brain. It's like, woo,
Yeah.
like, how can we expand that muscle in that baby, in that child? And really, from a very young age, I believe I would have done that when he was like 2 or 3.
Really?
I would have. And I think it really depends on the child too. My child being an only child and myself as an older parent, the child tends to be a little more mature, and the way I brought him up, a little more mature. So at the age of 3, he would have been ready to do that.
Yeah, and I don't, and that's why I'm asking in your mind. And I think that for parents, it might be 12 or 13.
Yes.
Or at another age. But I really believe that a child should get an understanding of what pain could be like chronically and bring it into showing adults that are in chronic pain and these things. We know that kids play sports and get hurt, and it doesn't seem to teach them the lesson there. So I'm just adding another part to it where it's promoted with connecting it to someone who may have it as an elderly person. And we certainly need to, and this may be a real controversial topic too, but I think we need to look at the sports that they're playing nowadays. I have to say that when I was growing up, I loved contact sports, and I love contact sports watching them now. I don't play them anymore, but I love watching them. But I really think, we're seeing bigger and bigger people that have better anatomy and better physiology and better training. And these people, football players at one point might have been 5'8", weighing 150 pounds. And now they're 6'9", weighing 320 pounds with armor on. and
the new gladiators.
Exactly. And a bonus if they win things. So it's very important to understand that these contact sports could be part of a process of chronic pain. And of course, we also talk about, I don't want to talk right now about brain injuries and concussions. Those are totally other topics, but it's still within the same realm. And as is spinal cord injuries, which brings a whole level of suffering to the individual and to families and friends. So I think that bones, joints, ligaments, and chronic pain need to be thought about, and that's one way to think about it. So I'm going to move on unless you wanted to bring something else up that you thought would be good.
Well, Glenn, being immersed in the school systems and learning about the different levels of elementary school, middle school, high school. I was just in a conversation recently when you talk about bones and ligaments, because of the cutbacks that our country here in the U.S. has basically been involved with. The schools actually the elementary schools don't even have a phys ed teacher. So the days where we were growing up and we learned to stretch, to warm up the muscles, to do sit-ups properly, to climb a rope, to play basketball, but to warm up the muscles before we do that, those days are gone right now. And then these children go to middle school when they're 11 years old. And I was told by one parent just a few days ago, said, "Oh my gosh, my son had a phys ed class and he failed phys ed because he couldn't run a 15-minute mile at 11 years old." Okay, which I was in shock. Because we walk a mile. We walk a mile almost every morning with our 6-year-old son. And, he's walked that mile since he was 2.5 years old. And it's not a flat mile. It is a hilly mile. And to hear this parent complain that her child could not do a 15-minute mile. And as the year is going to go on, they break it down to 14-minute and then 13 minutes so that the child, basically starts to improve on their stamina, etc. The parent was totally against it. And it shocked me because I said, my 6-year-old does that mile, and she was in shock. And I said, well, what about going for walks with your child? What about, this is up and coming. It's like any muscle. It's like when we are working academically and you're learning mathematics, you need to increase and get better, and you get tested each time. There's no difference physically. It's about bringing the body up to a certain standard of wellness. And they couldn't understand that because they never got it in elementary school.
Do you think that you obviously think that these kind of things, do you think that you would consider that in a school they put a pebble in every child's foot for a half hour? Let them walk around?
I think they should put a rock in the shoe of administrators to say, you see what's going to happen to the next generation if we don't wisen up on our education that we're actually giving these children and the parents.
Yeah. As part of that also, another possibility would be to put someone's arm in a sling for a day. So this is what it's like not to be able to use that arm that you like using so much.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I agree. So let's move on to the next one. I have a lot of things to cover, maybe. I have no idea. Okay. Or you have no idea about what I'm going to cover. Okay, so the next one is eyes and vision. We talk about macular degeneration and things like that and cataracts that happen in older age, but there's also injuries and infections and a number of things that can happen to a child. And I think it's important, and this is my next suggestion, that I think you should put a mask on every child and have that mask on them so they can't see. And again, pick a certain amount of time, make it 5 minutes, 10, an hour, or for an entire day, you're not going to be able to see. This is what not having vision is about, and this is why you need to protect your eyes. So if you go out into the sun, wear protective sunglasses. If you're going to be in some kind of a sport, wear protective goggles. If you're going to be doing something like sawing down a tree or pounding a nail, something where there might be flying objects that could come and hit you in the eye, it's a good possibility that you should think about developing a pattern of behavior so that you're always protecting your eyes. So for me, the way to do that would be to take away the vision of a child for a while and say that's, again, what it would be like if you lose your vision. This is why you need to protect your eyes. What do you think?
I agree.
Would you
It's
do
like
it?
that. Oh, of course. Of course.
Okay.
Actually, we kind of do things like that. Instead of a mask, we turn off all the lights when it's.
But you can't do that going outside.
No. You can't do that going outside.
That's
No.
why I'm saying, and it's easy, as a first step, certainly turning out the lights is a great idea because they still have the familiarity of their house. They know their little room and their little things. So that still gives them an indication that they can get around. But I think taking it to an extreme and taking them for example, taking your child for his 1 mile walk blindfolded.
Oh, that would be fun.
Yeah, and it would be an amazing learning experience. When I was teaching at one of our city colleges, an adult education program, I called it Mind Walks, Spirit Walks, where we did things, and part of it was qigong and walking meditation. And each time I did something different with the people, and I tried to work with senses sometimes. So we would take this walk on the beach, and I would break people up into couples where one person would be blindfolded for the first part of the walk, and the other would guide them or leave them alone, but just walk next to them and let them deal and then switch off. It's very fascinating, the things that come from that. Of course, this was in meditation, and this was also, in times that we had just finished qigong, so there was a very meditative portion to it. But in the case where you're not really meditating, you just say, okay, we're going for our walk today and you're not going to be able to see. This is what it would like to be blind. So you need to, as you go on in your own life, always be protective of your eyes.
That's a very good point. I like that, actually.
Yeah, and it would be interesting. I'd love to see if you would do that and follow it up, and even the conversations themselves. I would imagine, depending on your relationship with your child, which I kind of know yours, it would be possibly a fascinating conversation.
Yes, we can try that. Actually, I'd like to do it myself.
Yeah, of course, and you should do it. And everyone should do it, because as we get older, sometimes our vision starts failing. We're going to be talking about failure in a little while. Let me go to the next.
We haven't made it to the end yet.
We haven't even hit. Oh yeah, we're in the beginning right now. That's right. We covered the middle. Now we're in the beginning, and yeah, we'll end with the end, maybe. So, any other thoughts on that before I move forward?
No, I think I love the way of creating that awareness in children about that, the importance of the eyes, the importance of taking care of our joints.
Yeah, and again, this goes back to one of my first premises: is that as a species, we don't learn things unless we have some major events. So we don't want to teach a child how important vision is when they just had an eye taken out. So, or from a bad infection from hammering something and getting a splinter in the eye. So we want to start, I'm looking for some kind of an incident that would help a child develop a pattern of behavior so that as they move forward, they're always thinking about their tendons and joints. Not to the point of, no, I don't want to go for a walk because I might hurt my joints, but to extremes, and just be aware. So the next one is ears and hearing. I see, many people, again, as we get older, we're seeing people that are having to deal with hearing aids and missing, the certain parts of decibel levels, talking with an elderly loved one that's losing their hearing sometimes is very difficult for everyone. It even gets exhausting because the person is realizing they're losing it and they're trying really hard to listen. I watch this all the time, and the others are trying to speak louder and more slowly, which is the more slowly part may be okay at times, but there's a lot of difficulties. Plus, you can't enjoy certain things that you used to enjoy. You may not be able to listen to music as easily. You may miss great conversations and a number of things. So there are many different ways you can hurt your ears. There's a lot of people out there now that are surfers, on the coasts that are damaging their ears. They even have a term now for surfer's ear. And people end up having infections in their ears. They start losing hearing. Of course, there's many reasons for losing hearing that are not things that we can necessarily protect or prevent or prepare for. But there are some things, and it's always good to have ear checkups. And I should have said also before, obviously, getting eye checkups, periodically from either an ophthalmologist, which is an MD, or an optometrist, who is someone who checks vision and makes glasses and corrective lenses. But either one would be good as a first step.
Mm-hmm.
But also getting your ears checked out. So there's also tinnitus, which is that high-pitched sound that sometimes drives many people crazy when they can't get rid of it, and it's really a terrible thing. But of course, most important again is the loss of hearing. So my suggestion is to take a child and take away their hearing for, put earmuffs over them so they can't hear anything, and of course, don't connect it to an eye something.
An eye something.
Just leave it disconnected, or as Heidi Harrison says, unplug. So take away their hearing and have them spend 5 minutes, an hour, a complete day without hearing. And then also, again, point out those are people without hearing and have problems, etc. The elderly or kids that can't hear, and they're doing sign language, pointing that out. And then bringing in the concept of you have to have an awareness of your ears and protecting them for the rest of your life. And that means you can damage them listening to extremely loud music or loud sounds all the time. So that's my third one. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think that's a brilliant idea. I love these ideas of removing it, but I think it should be removed from everybody, because I have to say the middle generation, so to say, that are dealing with the elderly, Glenn, they have no idea what these folks are going through. And all I hear is criticism of, oh, they can't hear me again. Oh, it's like, oh, and they try to pretend that they can hear me and they can't. It's like, well, take your hearing away from yourself for a day, or even dull it and see how you really feel. And then put yourself in their position, and it doesn't feel good.
No, yeah, that's absolutely right. Actually, this conversation is for everybody to think about. It's a funny story I have with my parents as they were getting elderly. They're both passed on now, but as they were getting elderly, they both needed hearing aids. And when I would come and visit them, I would sit in the back seat. My father would drive, and my mother would be in the right front passenger seat. And at certain points, when we were driving, I noticed that my dad, they both wore hearing aids. My dad would turn off his right ear, which is the one closest to my mother. And
I won't ask why.
And my mother would turn off her left ear, closest to my father, so that they didn't have to hear each other. And
or maybe you were too loud in the back seat with your brother.
No, but I would just be very quiet watching, because what became hysterically funny, at least for me, was that each one not wanting to hear the other, but would be, because they had the other hearing aid, they could hear sounds. So one of them would start out and go, "What? What? Did you say something? No. What? No." They would never turn on that one hearing aid, but they would have this conversation, and it just cracked me up all the time.
Too much.
It was very funny. And the last one I want to talk about for the beginning, and this is very important, I think, also, and Ann Diamond talked about this, the social worker, therapist, family therapist, talked about some of the things that you did have control over. And the last one I want to talk about today is posture.
Mm.
And I know that kids, parents are always saying, stand up straight, stand up straight. But I think, and there are certain obvious diseases of the spine that can't be helped by posture, that some of them may be genetic or things like that. But certainly being aware of your spine and your posture. I was at a spine conference a few weeks ago, and interestingly, they showed a skeleton from the side view of a four-legged animal. And they seemed to imply that this is the way a spine should be, where you're looking at it horizontal to the plane of the ground. You could picture that, right?
Yep.
Okay. So then they had next to it a human who was in an upright standing position, looking from the side, and you saw the skeleton and you saw the spine, and then you saw that this is what our spine is, and we're not really meant to be like that because gravity keeps pulling us down, and it starts pushing down on each vertebrae more and more, and then that compresses spinal nerves, and then people get the syndromes like sciatica with a pain going down the leg, or the nerve pains in the arm, or numbness in a finger or a hand, or limited range of motion. But usually it starts with pain, degenerative disc disease, things like that. And one of the also important ones you see are the elderly people that have what we call kyphosis, and that's the rounding of the upper back, where the shoulders are humped a little bit and the head is way forward, and their normal height would be 6 inches taller if they were able to stand straight, or 8 inches taller. But you see these elderly people that are bent over, and they showed that a picture of a human skeleton in that form also. So all three were together: the four-legged animal with the horizontal spine, the two-legged animal with the vertical spine, and then this hunched over kyphotic person. And they were describing it almost as if the kyphotic person, is trying to get back to being an animal and being on all fours again. But as a human, we can't do that. So we have to protect against that. And it's really important to, I think, not just teach kids, say, stand up straight, but to, again, cause them to be in a position of something that they don't want. I think rather than saying always stand up straight, bend them over for a day, or for 5 minutes, or 10 minutes, or a half hour, whatever it is, to where they are in a position. And then, as we did with each of the others, connect it to, as you're out and about during the day, point out and observe a person that may be like that, to express to them, this is what I'm talking about. This happens over a period of time. Now, sometimes there are things, as I said, that are out of our hands. But if you have the ability to be aware of posture and to be always correcting it from a point of view of, this is what I could be like, and this will go back to my original point of suffering, limitation, limited motion, limited mobility, medications. All of this is what life is going to be like for all of us if we don't take care of these things.
Very good. Yes. That's funny you brought that up, because actually I did do that with my child.
Untie him. How long has it been? 8 years?
Well, it's one of you're right. Sometimes, you as a mother, you get to the point where you just don't want to be the nag. So you just go with it. Okay, well, let's see how long you can do this for then. And I'd go,
right.
No, slouch back over. No, slouch back over.
Right.
It's like, I'm getting tired of it. Oh, good.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, but I think it also needs to be connected to a reality of pointing out a person when you're out and about, saying, remember we did that little experiment where you were hunched over and you didn't like it? Well, there's a person who also doesn't like it, but they can't stand up straight like you still can.
Yes.
Okay?
Oh, definite connection. I have members of the family that are like that.
Sure,
So it
we
was
all
like,
do.
oh, that's what I'm going to be like if you don't start, if you're not careful.
Yeah, we all do. So we don't have to really go very far to find examples of it.
Yes, yes. And you know what's very interesting to me now I'm going to jump to sort of middle life with people who have started that whole rounding of the back. Uh, that when I say, what about lying back or stretching or doing a little gentle stretches or oh no, that feels so uncomfortable
Right.
that they're almost given in. Well, this is the way it's supposed to be. Don't you know? Like everyone goes through this and I'm aging and it's accepted, Glenn.
This is a great example, not a great example. This is the perfect segue into the next part of our topic, which is end of life and failure. But I do want to stay on this for a few more moments. There are many great exercises. Pilates is a great form of an exercise. We interviewed, I think both of us interviewed Kyrie Sherman, who does the
Hmm.
Tai Chi for kids in schools. There's a lot of things that can be done that can be simple and fun to help kids learn about posture. But the key here for all of these things, in my mind, is to teach a child an awareness so that as a pattern of behavior, they themselves are thinking about their vision. They themselves are correcting their posture at all times. Or at least every once in a while, they're checking in with their body, to see, is it aligned? Am I doing the right things? Am I starting to go into a bad program here with posture? All of these things. It's a concept that they need to develop the pattern and behavior that will have them have an awareness that will check in and repair it quickly. So as
Mm.
soon as you see that, oh, you're not standing correctly, or as soon as you recognize that you're hammering something and your glasses aren't on, you immediately check that and stop and go to the good pattern of behavior and correct it for the protection of lack of suffering in the future.
Mm, mm. Good point. Very good point.
So we're now moving. We started in the middle, we went to the beginning, and now we're coming to the end of life. And I want to talk about failure first. Failure usually is not a word that any of us like. We don't like to fail in our report card, get failing grades. We don't like to fail at a task. We certainly, from a medical point of view, we don't like to hear the terms of our different organs that are failing: congestive heart failure, or kidney failure, or liver failure. All of these things are bad for us, or they have a negative connotation. So what I'm trying to do today is to give a positive connotation to failure a little bit. And I use as my energy for this and my icon, weightlifters and bodybuilders. Weightlifters and bodybuilders are probably one of the few groups of people that actually pride themselves in failure, because when you are working out a muscle and you want to make it bigger or more shaped or stronger, you actually have to take that muscle to failure where it can't do what you want it to do. If you always keep it at a position where it can do exactly what you want to do, then it says to itself, we don't need to do anything else. We've got it covered. But if you start exercising and say you want to have a bigger bicep or be stronger, so you have to go to stronger, heavier weights, so that when the muscle fails, now it says, well, the next time I do this, I better be more prepared, and it gets stronger and bigger. So for weightlifters and bodybuilders, they appreciate failure. And what I see in people, if they're lucky enough to live to a certain age, then things start happening to them at various points where they have to start recognizing failure and compensating for it. For example, a person that's an athlete that hurts a lower extremity joint and can't be an athlete anymore, they don't end their life. They accept that process as a little bit of failure, and now I'm going to find something else that I can do to replace that. And as we all see, people as they age, their lungs start failing, so they can't be all as active. Now, of course, this isn't everyone. Hearts start failing a little, so they get out of breath a little more when they're walking, but they still do things. The vision starts going bad, and they compensate a little. First, they get glasses, then they have different types of surgeries, and then they just say, well, this is my vision. The same thing with hearing. All of these things, it's a question of it's going to happen if you protect yourself and do some of the things that we said, and of course, many other things. Then you have a better chance of not failing as rapidly, or maybe not failing as completely, or not failing at all until the final few moments, which we're going to speak about in the final portion of our show. But I think most of us seem to have some ability to compensate with whatever we have. But what I'm advocating here is a recognition that there might be and will be failures in certain parts, and that we should accept part of it gracefully. And that's all I can say in this particular part of that, is that when we stress out about it, we shouldn't be stressing out at the point when we've lost it. We should be dealing with it at an early age so that we either prevent it or prepare for it. And at the end, when things are happening and failing, we say, I did really well, so this is just part of it, and I'm graceful with it. And therefore, you don't add at the time of your later elder years, you're not stressed out about all these failures. So it's just a concept I'm thinking about right now. I could change my mind at some point. But as I see things in myself that begin to fail, and how you compensate, if you compensate gracefully, you're much better off.
But I do believe that's all through life too, Glenn, and more so as we all get older and the elderly. But I also notice that when the people that I work with that are like in their late 80s, early 90s, there's almost a peace that begins to, an acceptance and a peace that begins to come over them. It's like, okay, I'm in my late 80s or I'm in my 90s. What do you expect? It's okay. Yeah. And I can still do, and they're so grateful when they can still walk around, or they're still living on their own, or they're still able to walk to the grocery store even with their walker. They're so grateful. It's they've come to terms with what's going on, and they know that their end of life is coming up shortly. Not 20 years, whatever. They've lived a good life, and it's all okay. And if they lived a hard life, they have a certain peace about them that is so beautiful.
That's the point, to have the peace with that failure.
But would you call it failure?
Well, it's if a muscle is designed to do something and then it can't do it anymore, it's a failure of the muscle. If the eyes are designed to see acutely, proper colors, fine areas, central vision, peripheral vision, light and dark, near and close, that's what the eye is designed to see. Over time, things happen, and those are, I guess we could debate the word failure, but I'm just using it for the fun of this topic. I want to, since I'm being a little bit maybe provocative or controversial, I may as well look from a different point of view. Nobody likes failure, so I'm going to advocate failure, but gracefully.
Fail gracefully. I like that.
Fail with grace. Yeah.
Oh my.
So now how much time do we have left?
Oh,
I guess,
you have about 12 minutes.
12 minutes. So I'm going to rush through this a little bit. So now we're coming to the end of life.
I
And
thought we just made it there.
no, we're still way,
Now's
way,
the
way.
rebirth. Thank you.
No, we haven't even hit rebirth yet. But this could be an important part of rebirth. I want to talk about as a person comes to end of life, and that doesn't necessarily mean it's a 95-year-old. That could also mean a 10-year-old with leukemia.
Mhm.
But for the beginning part, although we're doing a lot of great things with the leukemias now, so maybe I need to think we're doing a lot of great things with everything. Many people that had things years ago that they were dying from are living now and doing fairly well. So there's lots of good things, but still, there's no guarantee when the end of life is going to come. So there needs to be preparation. So for the beginning of this, I'm mainly talking about people that are middle-aged to elderly, and I'm going to advocate, this is very straightforward, that everybody get an advance directive. And what that is, it's some kind of a special document that will help you as a person when you're in good condition and can make decisions to figure out what you want when you are not in a position to make decisions. This is very important. And it's something that everybody should do because there's a lot of stress, at least in the Western world, about death and dying. And the stress is, first of all, usually for the person that is near death, but also for loved ones and friends, family members, number of other people. They're not sure what to do. And I deal with this every day as a medical guide. Do we, the proverbial, pull the plug? Do we give pain medicine? Do we go to hospice? Do we go to long-term care? Do we do nothing? Do we look for surgery? How much do we want to do? These are very difficult questions. And it's almost not fair as a person to put the decision on someone else when they don't have the true idea of what you want to do. And especially if there might be multiple family members with different relationships with mom or different relationship with dad, and everyone wants their opinion to be followed. So this advanced healthcare directive is something that everyone should get. It's usually can be gotten from the government. It can be gotten from your physician, possibly a hospital, many places. It just simply tells others and instructs others as to the decisions you want to be made. And this is the way it should be. It takes the burden off of everybody. There are things that have to be done. You have to appoint an agent, someone that will do it. You have to give them instructions on your health care. Do you want to be resuscitated? Do you want pain medication? Do you want fever control? Do you want to be comfortable? A number of things like that. The thing that happens to people is, one, they don't want to talk about it. And two, they usually hear the bad marketing, like, oh, if I do an advance directive, that means, if I have a sore throat and I go to the doctor, well, they're going to kill me for my organs, so they're not going to help me because I said I don't want to be resuscitated. The advance directive has many parts to it that are misconceptions. A person can always change anything they want to on the advance directive. It isn't something that has to be, once you write at age 50, it isn't necessarily going to be the same at age 80. You can change it, but you have some protection there. So that's a big misconception. And you can change all sorts of things. You could change the person that you chose. Originally, it might have been your doctor, and then you changed doctors, or it might have been, your a sister, and you don't want that sister to do it anymore. You could change all of these things. It becomes a legal document, but it also can be overridden. If you are of sound mind and want to have another discussion while you're in the hospital, you can do certain things with witnesses. It's all protected. The thing that's important is it's a form, and the form itself is pretty simple and straightforward. The difficult part of it is the complexity of the conversations you have to have. And these conversations, if you have them, and if you use the form to bring them up, or you could have it with a physician, a clergy member, a social worker, other friends, get together and talk about things like that, family members. It's very complex, but it's actually very healing and stress reducing. And so this is an important thing that I think we all need to do. Now, do you have any thoughts on that for a second? I want to talk about another type of a program that's out there, aside from, but similar to the advanced directive called the 5 Wishes. I don't know if you've heard of that.
Oh, yes. I think you actually informed me about that this year sometime, which is a very wonderful site, actually.
Yeah, it's really good. So did you look for, I don't mean did you look for, do you have any thoughts on the advanced directive?
I think it's a very important piece that everybody needs to have in place, especially at almost any age.
Right.
Once you become an adult and you are out there in the world, it's a good piece to be conscious about and to put in place in respect of those around you. And I loved what you said about it can be changed at any time. It can be changed. I can change it today and next week change my mind and change it again, depending on who's in my life at the time. And quite possibly I'll listen to one of our shows and kind of go, oh, I can do that now. I mean, who knows, Glenn, who knows what is going to be in the scientific medical world in 5 years from now? I mean, it's advancing so quickly.
Exactly. We've even declared that you've heard for forever that once your heart stops and you stop breathing, you have about 4 minutes before your brain dies. Have you heard that before?
No, I have not.
Well, that was what was out there when we in the emergency department had to make decisions, and we found somebody was without a heartbeat and without breath for a certain period of time. That helps us to decide whether we should attempt to resuscitate or not. Our normal default is to resuscitate, but if you know someone hasn't been breathing for 2 days and their heart hasn't been beating for a week, then you don't resuscitate. But we always used to use as our guideline around 4 minutes, because resuscitating someone and bringing them back with brain damage was not necessarily a victory.
Mm-hmm.
So, but that time has extended now through science and research. So you're definitely correct. There are actually, when you talk about the advanced directive, they give this thing whenever you want to look at your advanced directive. They call the 5 Ds. D is in David. So they say these are the 5 times when you should look at your advanced directive and go over it to make sure it's still what you want. 1 is decade. Every new decade, just look at it again. The second one is death. Whenever you experience a death of someone else, a death in the family, it's time to relook at it. And usually that happens anyway. You start thinking a little more about it. The third one is divorce. If you have a divorce in your family or yourself, that's another time to look at your advanced directive. The fourth one is diagnosis. When and if you're diagnosed with a serious health condition. And the last one is decline. When you start experiencing your own decline and you still have the ability to make decisions, then that's another time to look at it. So I want to talk about this other topic. It's a form of an advanced directive, but it's very interesting. They all have around the same things in them, but it's not in every state. There's about 5 or 6 or maybe 10 states in the United States that don't have the 5 wishes. But you can look through the government and figure it out whether your state has it. I would look at it. You could look at it online, and just even if you don't download the form, you may want to use that form as a concept for these discussions. So I want to read the 5 wishes to you so that I make it very clear. And then each one of these wishes allows you to have conversations. And this is how you go about figuring out the 5 wishes and how you want to prepare for the end. Wish number 1, the person I want to make healthcare decisions for me when I can't make them for myself. So that's the first one, and you have discussions about that. And then you have, if you choose that person, you clearly have to have discussions with them about what they want, what you want. The second wish, and Christina, let me know if you have a question about any of those. I mean, any of these, they'll probably be pretty obvious, but they can become kind of thought-provoking in a way.
Mm-hmm.
Second wish, my wish for the kind of medical treatment I want or don't want, which would include things like life support, pain management, food and water, close to death considerations, coma, or brain dead. So that you have to have those discussions for each of those things, because if you go into one of those things, and it's very possible that any one of us can go into one of those, and someone has to make that decision, and you've already written it out, not only does it make it easier for them, but you end up with hearing the comment, Grandma wanted it that way. She'll be much happier.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you have that as your backup, that's a great thing for everybody. Wish number 3, my wish for how comfortable I want to be. And then you can say things like, I want pain medication. I want enough medicine to relieve it. Even if I'm drowsy, I want to be comfortable. If I have signs of depression or something like that, or shortness of breath, or I'm hallucinating, what kind of care I want at that moment in time. If I have a fever, and I want a cool cloth, if I want my lips moistened, you can get very deeply into it. If someone feels that my hands and feet are cold or something, I may want a warm blanket or a massage, or even you can talk about music that you might want and things that are around you at the time. So many things to talk about in that area, but it really gives definitions. And this one in particular is one that I think is an important one for children. If you have a child that is potentially dying, then that may want to be a discussion, and leave it up to you and the child psychologist of how deeply you talk about death. But certainly you can talk to the child about, what music do you want to hear around you now? What stuffed animal do you want? Do you have a video? Do you have your favorite blanket? All sorts of things like that. You can have discussions. If you want a certain poem that the child likes or a book to be read, these are great things that a child can talk about that will help you and ease your discomfort and theirs. So, wish number 4, my wish for how I want people to treat me. And so this might be how much you want them to know, whether you want them to be able to hold your hand, so many other possibilities in this. And I want only kind words spoken around my bedside. It's all sorts of great conversations that can be had in that area. And then the final one is my wish for what I want my loved ones to know. So it's another thing that guides the discussion, guides the conversations, how much you need people to know. I really like this. Not necessarily that this is the thing, even if it's not in your state, it gives you opportunities for discussion, which I think are great. And if you do get these, they have them in multiple languages. The 5 wishes, I think, is about a $5 or $6 fee, maybe even a little fee to send it to you or something like that. But I want to recommend definitely the advanced healthcare and or the 5 wishes to everybody.
That's a great recommendation, because it's really important. And yes, you're right. People don't like to talk about it. I have a lot of elderly people around me. They're not necessarily elderly, so to say, in their good 70s, and they still don't want to talk about it.
Yep.
Though they ask me to be on their health directive, I go, we need to talk about this if you want me there.
Yeah, and it's a great starting point. And if you have, and instead of trying to run the conversation, if you had the actual form of the advance directive in front of you, and you could just go down it question by question, then it becomes, oh, we're just filling out a form like an application or something like that. But then as you start filling it out, then you can start getting into more specific things, and then the discussions happen and things open up. And that's why I think the 5 wishes also, the advance directive it feels a little more, this is straightforward.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas the 5 wishes starts giving you a soundtrack and a backdrop, and you get to really add to the painting or to the meal of the final outcome. So you really get to do things. You really get to have discussions, and sometimes it could become fun. We used to do things in our integrative medicine program. When somebody was in the hospital and they were dying, we would either, if they wanted it, we would set up a big painting, a canvas in their room, and each person that came and visited put a little piece of, painted a little thing. Some people did tapestries or blankets or quilts. So while a person was in the hospital or in hospice, they would come and they would add a little piece to the quilt, and then at the end, it was very nice. And it helped lots of people to be doing things at that point.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
So it's very nice because I've seen, one of the advantages I've had of being in emergency medicine and being in hospitals and being a medical guide, I see people at that very instant of death more than others do. Certainly there are some others that do, but for the average person, compared to what you might see in a hospital and in medicine and emergency medicine, I've seen the reactions of the dying, the dead, and the families and the grieving and all of the aspects that go along with it. And the more things that can be done to make it smooth and graceful and stress-free, the better it is for everyone on every level.
Wonderful. That's I am so in agreement with everything you've said, Glenn. I think it's one of those where to be at peace and comfortable with your decisions and knowing that those decisions can be changed at any time. Yep. And it is all a part of that end of life or middle life too, that we have to become very aware of that anything can happen.
Yep. Any moment. That was the one of the true things that for me was a lesson in the emergency department. At any moment. Mm-hmm. And you can't predict it in terms of what you think karma might be. This person who is the wonderful dad or the wonderful mom and the wonderful community member and the wonderful parent and the wonderful spouse and everything else, the wonderful professional, comes in, hit by a drunk driver, and they're paralyzed from the neck down. And they're 35 years old or 40 years old, and you go, wow, that didn't make sense from a karmic point of view, from that, looking at that moment. But a lot of it doesn't, and it could happen to anyone at any moment. So it's really good for people to know your wishes, not their wishes.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
So that's life.
There you go. That is truly life in our nutshell.
We've covered life.
Absolutely. Oh my goodness. Well, what is now you always ask your guests the tip that they have.
The health tip?
The health tip. What is your health tip?
I want you to ask me that, because every time I ask them for a health tip, I always have this concern that my tongue is going to get tied between the end of health and the beginning of tip. And so there's that serious moment. I have to have complete focus, just to let everyone know, when I'm asking someone for their health tip, I'm very aware that I could trip over it and start spitting and slurring and everything else. So I want to hear you say it. Ask me.
Well, we are here speaking to our wonderful medical guide, Dr. Glenn Woolman, and we are ready for his health tip that he will share with all of us.
Thank you, Christine. See how tough that was?
Health
Or
tip?
maybe not. You're an experienced thespian. So maybe not in your case. We have to get Segovia to try it. Okay, so here's my health tip for today. There are 86,400 seconds in one day in general. It seems to me that everyone could take a few seconds to be grateful, and then another few seconds to honor your own health and check in on your health to make sure you're in balance. So out of 86,400 seconds, a few seconds a day seems to me pretty easy, and that's my health tip.
That's a good piece of awareness. I like that one. Just a few seconds, everyone.
Just a few seconds. You have 86,400.
Can you just spare a few?
Yeah.
Just to send that out.
I'm not asking that much. What am I asking?
Just for a few seconds.
Yeah.
And on that note, I will take a few seconds to let you know how grateful we are, Dr. Glenn Woolman, for this wonderful piece of life that you've shared with us today, and bringing the awarenesses of what we can do to actually live life at a more conscious level. And hopefully we will all try some of those little pebbles in the shoes, and a little blindfolding, and a little bit of earmuffs or earplugs, no matter what age you are, and see what it feels like. See if it brings some new awarenesses to your life. It's wonderful.
Thank you. And I'm grateful to just being here and doing what we do, and grateful to our audience. And we look forward to seeing you again in another week as we travel through another quadrant of the healthcare galaxy, searching for optimal health.
Thank you so much, Dr. Glenn Woolman, and of course to Segovia Smith and the Yoga Hub team for making this possible, and to you for joining us on this new platform of education and information. We're always grateful for your continuous support and look forward to hearing your feedback on how we can serve you better. We invite you to join us live on Tuesdays for Magical Medical Tour at 10:30 a.m. Pacific, 1:30 p.m. Eastern, Wednesdays for Trinity of Life at 11 a.m. Pacific, 2 p.m. Eastern, followed every other week with Flowing into Awareness with Anatara. You can connect with Dr. Glenn Woolman by following him on Twitter at Glenn Woolman, and of course through his own website, glennwoolman.com, where I really encourage you to learn about his metaphor square breath. And you can use that at any age, beginning, middle, or end. Again, we're grateful for your feedback and support. Give us a call at 818-LETS-TALK. 818-LETS-TALK. And until next time, namaste.